LearnCity. My name is Praise, and today we'll be moving to a brand new topic on logic and logical reasoning. Logic and logical reasoning. Now, defining logic. Logic can be defined as a proper or reasonable way of thinking about something. It can also be defined as a science that deals with the rules and processes used in sound thinking and reasoning. Logic can be defined as a proper or reasonable way of thinking about something. Basically, me thinking that 2 is an even number, 1 is an odd number, is defined as logic because it is a proper and reasonable way of thinking about something. It can also be defined as a science that deals with the rules and processes used in sound thinking and reasoning. Logic in mathematics is used to sharpen the logical and analytical skills as they are necessary for the understanding and learning of mathematical proofs. Logic in mathematics is used to sharpen the logical and analytical skills as they are necessary for the understanding and learning of mathematical proofs. Now we'll be defining some terms. And our first time we'll be defining statements. A statement is a sentence which is either true or false, but not both simultaneous. A statement is a sentence which can either be true or false. Now, moving to a simple statement. A statement is called simple if it cannot be broken down into 2 or more statements. That is a simple statement. Example, 2 is an even number. I cannot break down 2 is an even number into 2 statements. 2 is an even number. It is not logical as it talks about reasoning and thinking. So that is a simple statement. So a statement can be called a simple statement if that sentence cannot be broken down into 2 or more statements. Now, a compound statement. A compound statement is one which is made up of both a simple and which is made up of 2 or more simple statements. A compound statement is a statement in which the statement is made up of 2 or more simple statements. For example, 11 is both an odd number and a prime number. 11 is both an odd number and prime number. It can be broken down in 2 statements where we can say 11 is an odd number and 11 is a prime number. And this is known as a compound statement, whereby a compound statement is a statement whereby 2 or more simple statements can be gotten from that statement. Now we talk about conjunction. Conjunction is if 2 simple statements P and Q are connected by the word and, then the resulting compound statement P and Q is called a conjunction of P and Q and is written in the symbolic form P conjunction Q. So, a conjunction is when we make use of the word and to join 2 different words together. Just in case where we have P and Q and is written as P and Q. That is the symbolic form of writing conjunction. And disjunction, which is the other part. So instead of and, for disjunction, we'll be having or. Instead of and, we'll be having or. And we have this to be P or Q. We have this to be and. We have this to be or. This is conjunction. And this is disjunction. So we have conjunction and disjunction. We also have the negation. Negation is an assertion that a statement fails or denial of a statement is called negation of the statement. The negation of the statement is generally formed by introducing the word not at some proper place in the statement or by prefixing the statement. It is not the case that, or it is false that, the negation of the statement P in symbolic form is written as negation P. So negation is written as negation P. Now, the negation of the statement is trying to tell us the fact that in this form, this statement, it is not true. It is false. It is not the case of this. It is not the case of that. It shows us that that statement is negative, in which that statement is a false statement, or it is a denial of that statement. That is called the negation of a statement. Now, the negation of a negation, shows that the negation is remarked and is connective, which modifies a given statement, and it applies only to a single simple statement, in which you can write it as negation of negation P. We can write it as negation, which is like minus P, minus P, and minus P is also known as P. So negation of a statement is basically known as that statement is positive. The statement is positive. So the negation of a statement is the statement itself. So we are having negation P. We have the statement to be P, in which P is the statement itself. Now, moving to conditional statements. When we record that P and Q are two statements, now compound statements will tell you that if P then Q. Compound tells us if P then Q. So it has a conditional statement, if or then, and it's written as the symbolic form of P to Q or P to Q. Hence, P is called the hypothesis, while Q is called the conclusion. So this is called the hypothesis and this is called the conclusion, in which can also be called as antecedent and consequence. That is P and Q of the conditional statement. So this conditional statement can be expressed in 5 ways. If P, then Q. Q if P, where we have a goat. If this goat is black, we have a goat, comma, if this goat is black. Now, P only if Q, we have P is sufficient for Q and Q is necessary for P. So these 5 statements will determine whether a statement is a conditional statement or not. And conditional statements also reflect an idea that if P is true, automatically Q has to be true. And if P is false, then Q also is false. The conditional statement reflects an idea that if P is true, then Q is true. And if P is false, then Q is false. Now we move to the biconditional statement. Now, the biconditional statement is if two statements P and Q are connected by the connective if and only if, then the resulting compound statement P if and only if Q is called a biconditional of P and Q. And biconditional is P and Q. Conditional state says if P, then Q. While biconditional will say if P and only if Q, which means we are still basically talking about that P and Q. Now, we talk about the contrapositive and the converse statement of a conditional statement. Now, the contrapositive of a conditional statement states that if the statement negative P to negative Q is called P to Q. So that is the contrapositive. The contrapositive is saying that when we have the negative Q and the negative P of a conditional statement, we have it to be P conditional Q, where we have negative Q to negative P, we then have it to P to Q. And for converse of the statement, so converse of the statement will tell you when Q is to P, our P is also to Q. So this is the converse, which also means the inverse of P and Q. The inverse of P and Q. And this brings us to the end of our class on logic and mathematical reasoning or logical reasoning, where we talked about what logic is, we talked about what logic is, how we can use logic, we talked about simple statements, we talked about statements, we talked about compact statements, conjunction, disjunction, negation, and the negation of a statement. We talked about conditional statements, we talked about biconditional statements, we talked about the contrapositive of a conditional statement, and we talked about the converse of a conditional statement. And this brings us to the end of our class of logic and mathematical reasoning or logical reasoning. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and comment on our videos, and I'll be seeing you in the next class. I remain Praise, your mathematics tutor. Thank you and have a wonderful day.